People think arguments are battles of intelligence. They imagine that if they speak louder, explain longer, or defend harder, they will win respect, but the truth is brutal, simple, and older than any philosophy textbook. The moment you argue, you lose control. The moment you react, you lose power. The moment you try to convince, you lose authority. This is not modern psychology. This is ancient human nature, understood by kings, emperors, strategists, and the most feared minds in history. Machiavelli warned rulers never to argue with those beneath them. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that opinions of others cannot injure him unless he lets them. Epictetus taught that arguing with a foolish person makes you indistinguishable from them. Sun Tzu said that battles are won before the first strike, not through chaos and noise. Across civilizations, across centuries, one truth echoes again and again. Powerful people do not argue, they do not defend, they do not explain, they do not chase validation, they control the frame silently. But normal people, they chase, they react, they explain, they debate, they get dragged down into emotional mud, and they confuse noise with influence. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you saw a truly powerful man, calm, disciplined, respected, get into a loud argument? When did you last see a strategic leader lose his temper, trying to prove he is right? You don't see it, because it never happens. Asterisk, asterisk. Power is quiet. Weakness is loud. Asterisk, asterisk. Arguments are a trap. They pull you into emotional territory where logic dies, ego takes over, and dignity disappears. Most people argue for one reason. They want to be seen as right. Powerful people want to understand what is useful. These are not the same thing. A weak man argues to protect his fragile identity. A strong man observes in silence, because he does not need validation from anyone. Look closely. The moment someone pushes you to argue, they're doing it for themselves, not for the truth. They want a reaction. They want drama. They want a rise out of you. They want to feel bigger by pulling you down. And when you respond, when you match their energy, when you jump into their fire, you give them exactly what they wanted. Your attention, your energy, your emotional stability, your time, your frame. Congratulations. They win. This is why Machiavelli called the argument the weapon of the powerless. He understood that when a ruler explained himself, he lowered himself to the level of his critics. He became just another voice in the crowd. And the moment a king becomes equal to the crowd, he is no longer a king. Marcus Aurelius agreed. He wrote, "Greater than to be provoked is to hand over your mind." Think about that. When someone triggers you into arguing, you literally hand them your most valuable possession, your clarity. Epictetus went even further. He said that arguing with the ignorant is like trying to teach music to a deaf man. The louder you shout, the less dignity you retain. Silence makes a man unreadable. Argument makes a man predictable. When you argue, you reveal your emotions, your insecurities, your mental state. What triggers you, what you are trying to hide, what you desperately want to defend. You tell the world exactly where to hit you next time. But silence hides everything. Silence forces the other person to guess. Silence creates psychological pressure, and whoever creates pressure controls the situation. This is the heart of Machiavelli strategy. This is the essence of Stoic composure to the untrained eye. Silence looks like weakness. To the strategic mind, silence is absolute dominance. Because silence does something arguments can never do. It forces the other person to confront their own insecurity. Try it once. When someone tries to provoke you, says something disrespectful, tries to challenge you, tries to prove you wrong, just stop, become still, become silent, become unreadable. Watch how they crumble. They will repeat their insult. They will get louder. They will explain themselves twice, 3 times. They will try to bait you again. They will keep looking at your face, searching for weakness. But you won't blink. You won't react. You won't defend yourself. And in that moment, they realize something terrifying. They cannot control you. They cannot reach you. They cannot shake you. They cannot touch your mind. This is why silence wins. Not because it avoids conflict, but because it exposes who is truly in control. People fear what they cannot predict. They fear what they cannot read. They fear what they cannot provoke. Your silence becomes their mirror, reflecting their own emotional chaos back at them. Do you see now? Arguments are not about truth, they are about power, and power does not shout. Power does not chase. Power does not explain. Power watches. Power listens. Power chooses the battlefield. Power strikes only when necessary, and never out of emotion. Arguments don't start with words, they start with insecurity. Every argument is a subtle confession that says, your opinion about me matters more than my peace. That single belief is enough to collapse your entire inner world. Because the man who needs to be understood, who needs to be agreed with, who needs to be validated, who needs to defend himself, is already defeated. Let's go deeper into the psychology. Beneath the surface, the frame battle, you don't see every interaction between two people is a battle of frames. Your frame is your psychological territory, your emotional ground. Who is reacting? Who is leading? Who is calm? Who is losing composure? Who is dictating the tone? Who is setting the pace? This is happening every second you speak. Strong frames stay still. Weak frames adapt, bend, explain, react, and collapse. When someone tries to argue with you, they are not challenging your logic, they are challenging your frame. And the moment you respond emotionally, the moment you argue back, the moment you try to prove a point, you silently declare, your frame is stronger than mine. This is why losing your calm, even for 10 seconds, destroys your presence. People read your energy long before they hear your words. If you react quickly, you look insecure. If you raise your voice, you look weak. If you try to convince, you look unsure. If you defend yourself, you look guilty. If you argue, you look threatened. But if you remain still, silent, unfazed, you communicate something far more powerful. I am unshakable. Half the world fears a man who cannot be shaken. The other half respects him. The ego trap. Why most men arguments come from ego, and ego is the loudest form of insecurity. A weak man needs to be right. A strong man needs to remain in control. Those are two completely different lives. The ego tells you, don't let them disrespect you. Don't let them talk to you like that. Don't let them win. Show them you're not stupid. But your ego never asks, is this worth my energy? Is this worth my peace? Is this person even on my level? A lion doesn't roar at every barking dog. He doesn't justify his authority. He doesn't explain his position. He simply remains what he is. And the world understands. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journal, greater than, choose not to be harmed, and you will not be. He wasn't talking about physical harm, he was talking about psychological harm. Arguments only hurt you when you attach your identity to winning them. If you need victory, you are already dependent on someone else's mind. If you need to be right, you have already given them power. Silence is not about running away from the argument. It is about refusing to let someone control your emotional state. Why? Arguments lower your value. Listen carefully. High-value men do not argue. Low-value men argue constantly. Why? Because high-value men have nothing to prove. Low-value men have everything to defend. The more you argue, the more you reveal. You have time for nonsense. You are emotionally reachable. You take things personally. You are disturbed easily. You need approval. You have no mission. You lack discipline. You care too much what others think. Worse, you reveal exactly which buttons control you. This is why Machiavelli warned leaders never to debate publicly. He who argues with the people becomes one of the people. Arguments strip you of status. They make you look equal to, or weaker than the person challenging you. A man who stays silent rises above the chaos. A man who argues falls into it. Imagine walking into a room filled with noise. Everyone is screaming, debating, emotional. And then, in the corner, One man sits still.com.unbothered.unreactive.he says nothing, he explains nothing, he defends nothing. And yet everyone feels his presence, everyone senses a weight around him, everyone notices the difference. Why? Because silence communicates certainty, arguments communicate fear. The world follows the man who does not need to be heard to be respected. The Machiavellian secret, control, through Nanangajiment, Machiavelli taught rulers the art of strategic absence. Avoid reacting when others expect it. Avoid explaining when others demand it. Avoid debating when others challenge you. Why? Because the imagination of your opponent is a stronger weapon than any words you could speak. Silence forces people to wonder, what is he thinking? Why isn't he responding? Does he know something I don't? Is he planning something? Your absence creates mystery. Your silence creates tension. Your composure creates dominance. And here is the deeper truth. People fear the consequences they cannot see. When you argue, your reactions reveal everything. When you remain silent, they fear the unknown. Machiavelli understood this psychological leverage better than anyone. The quiet man controls the emotional man. The emotional man destroys himself. When someone yells and you stay calm, when someone insults you and you don't flinch, when someone demands your reaction and you give them nothing, they lose the battle with themselves, because they expected a fight, and you refuse to lose your peace. That is true victory, the Stoic truth. No one can provoke a mind that doesn't see a Stoicism is not about being emotionless. It is about mastering your emotions. It teaches, people do not annoy you, you allow them. Insults do not hurt you, you interpret them. Arguments do not trap you, you walk into them. The Stoics believed that the strongest man is not the one who wins debates but the one who refuses to be disturbed. You can win an argument and still lose your power, but you can lose an argument and still maintain your dignity. Stoicism is not pacifism, it is strategic self-control. It tells you, you cannot control what they say, but you can control whether or not it enters your mind. Your silence is not surrender, it is sovereignty over your own inner world. The Stoics believed that arguing with someone emotionally unstable is like trying to wrestle a man drowning in mud. You will not save him. You will only sink with him. The unreadable man is the most powerful man in a world full of noise. The quiet mind is the rarest presence. People try to read you, predict you, understand you. Control you. They observe your facial expressions. Your tone, your reactions, your defensiveness. Every argument is a book you open for them, exposing your weaknesses between every line. But silence. Silence is a locked vault. And the man who cannot be read, cannot be manipulated, cannot be provoked, cannot be used, that man terrifies people, because unpredictability creates power. Most people don't argue because they want truth. They argue because they want control. And once you understand this, you will never fall into their trap again. Every manipulator, every insulter, every fragile ego has one weakness. They need your reaction. Your reaction is their oxygen. Your silence is their suffocation. This is why the most dangerous weapon you possess is not intelligence. Not strength. Not experience. It's your ability to not engage. Let's break this down deeply. Because once you learn this psychology, you will deal with people differently for the rest of your life. The manipulator's first weapon, provocation. Manipulators don't start arguments to win debates. They start them to test how easily you can be controlled. If they can trigger your emotions, they can predict your behavior. If they can predict you, they can influence you. If they can influence you, they can use you. Manipulators always begin with a provocation. A slight insult, a passive-aggressive comment, a subtle disrespect, a challenge to your intelligence, a joke that wasn't a joke, a doubt about your ability, a question framed to embarrass you. Why? Because the first person to lose emotional control loses power. If you fire back instantly, they win. If you get angry, they win. If you become defensive, they win. If you explain yourself, they win. Machiavelli understood this psychological warfare centuries ago. He who is angry is conquered. A man who can be triggered can be controlled. A man who cannot be triggered terrifies manipulators. The silent response that destroys them. Here is what manipulators cannot handle. Stillness. Silence, a calm expression, a neutral tone, a lack of reaction when they insult you, and you stay composed. When they throw bait, and you don't bite. When they expect chaos, and you give them peace. Their strategy collapses completely. Why? Because they rely on emotional escalation. They want noise, they want chaos, they want heat. Your silence blocks their fuel. Your calm freezes their fire. Your lack of reaction shatters their confidence. In that moment, they begin to fear you. Not because of what you said, but because of what they could not provoke. They start wondering, why didn't he react? Is he smarter than I thought? Is he planning something? Does he know something I don't? What is he thinking? Why is he so calm? And then the real psychological damage hits. They realize they have no power over you. The insulter's secret insecurity. People who insult you are revealing one simple truth. They feel inferior, they feel small, they feel threatened. They insult to see if they can bring you down to their level. If you respond angrily, you confirm their importance. If you defend yourself, you confirm your insecurity. But if you stay silent, if you stay still, if you stay indifferent, they face a reality they cannot tolerate. Their insult had no impact. And nothing destroys a weak person more than realizing they couldn't shake you. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Greater than ignore the noise, let it pass." He didn't mean run away, he meant rise above. The person who insults is trying to climb into your mind. Your silence slams the door shut. The argument seeker's worst nightmare. Some people don't want solutions. They want drama, they thrive on conflict. They enjoy emotional chaos. They live off tension. They are addicted to the feeling of pulling others into their storm. But when they try to argue with you, and you give them nothing, no anger, no explanations, no attempts to prove yourself, it destroys them internally. Because their entire identity is built on emotional reactions. Without your reaction, they feel powerless, invisible, irrelevant, small, defeated. Emotionally naked. Your silence exposes how dependent they are on external energy. Their whole personality collapses without conflict. This is why Stoics never argue. Not because they're soft, but because they refuse to feed emotional parasites. The uncomfortable power of non-response. People expect emotional reciprocity. If they shout, they expect shouting. If they insult, they expect defensiveness. If they challenge, they expect resistance. When none of this arrives, when you stand there, calm, unreadable, you break their psychological script. They don't know what to do. They don't know what will happen next. They don't know how to regain control. This unpredictability is power. Silence is a mirror. It forces people to deal with their own thoughts instead of your reaction. Your calm becomes their discomfort. Your silence becomes their confusion. Your neutrality becomes their defeat. The Stoic response, vs. the emotional response. The emotional man says, "I must defend myself." The Stoic man says, "There is nothing to defend." The emotional man says, "I must prove them wrong." The Stoic man says, "The truth does not need my protection." The emotional man says, "I must correct them." The Stoic man says, "They do not deserve my energy." The emotional man says, "I must respond." The Stoic man says, "I choose my battles, and this is beneath me." Stoics didn't stay calm because they were passive. They stayed calm because they understood something deeper. Asterisk. No one can embarrass you unless you believe their words. Asterisk. No one can drag you down unless you accept the invitation. Asterisk. No one can diminish you unless you give them permission. Your reaction is the real battlefield. Your silence is the real victory. The Machiavellian principle of emotional levity. Machiavelli believed emotions were weapons, and the one who loses control of his emotions becomes a weapon in the hands of others. Asterisk. When you argue, you're not fighting the other person. You're fighting your own need for validation. When you stay silent, you're not avoiding conflict. You're controlling the emotional leverage of the situation. Silence shifts the entire dynamic. They speak, you observe, they provoke. You remain still. Asterisk. They escalate, you remain neutral. They demand, you refuse to give. They seek control, you maintain inner authority. Asterisk. This reversal breaks them psychologically, because manipulators live off reactions, insulters live off attention. Asterisk. Argument-seekers live off emotional engagement. Silence starves all three at once. Asterisk. The difference between weak silence and powerful silence. Weak silence is fear. Powerful silence is choice. Weak silence retreats. Powerful silence observes. Weak silence hides. Powerful silence intimidates. Weak silence is unsure. Powerful silence is unshakable. The world can feel the difference. A fearful man avoids arguments because he lacks strength. A powerful man avoids arguments because he doesn't waste strength. Silence becomes dominance only when it comes from a place of certainty. Asterisk. When your inner world is calm. Asterisk. Your outer world becomes untouchable. There comes a point in every man's life when he realizes something shocking. Most people don't want truth, they want validation. They don't want clarity, they want victory. Asterisk. They don't seek understanding. They seek dominance. And this is exactly why arguing is a losing strategy. Because when you argue, you walk into a battlefield they chose. Asterisk. On terrain they control. Asterisk. With emotions they own. And with an audience, they influence. Power is never built on someone else's stage. Machiavelli knew this. Stoics mastered this. Asterisk. And every successful, dominant, respected individual today operates by this quiet principle. Asterisk. Control the arena, and you control the outcome. 4.1. The law of silent positioning. Strong men don't argue. Not because they're weak, but because they're strategic. They've learned a truth the average person never understands. Silence is not absence. It is presence in its purest form. Silence forces the other person to face their own mind, their own contradictions. Asterisk. Their own emotional storms. Asterisk. When you stay silent. Asterisk. They project their insecurities onto the empty space. They lose balance while you stay centered. They reveal their intentions while you protect yours. People call it calmness, called it advantage. Asterisk. And the Stoics. They considered silence a spiritual discipline. Asterisk. 4.2. The power of strategic ambiguity. Asterisk. Weak men explain too much. Strong men reveal too little, because the more you say, the more predictable you become. Asterisk. And the more predictable you are, the easier you are to manipulate. Arguments force you to reveal your hand, your logic, your beliefs, your emotional triggers. That's why the powerful choose ambiguity, not because they're hiding, but because they're protecting the only real weapon that matters, uncertainty. Asterisk. A man who cannot be read, cannot be controlled. A man who cannot be provoked, cannot be defeated. A man who doesn't respond, forces the world to respond to him. Asterisk. 4.3. Control attention, and you control everything. Arguments are bait. They drag you into reaction. They steal your focus. They bind your emotions. Asterisk. But a powerful man conserves attention like gold. Asterisk. Why? Asterisk. Because attention builds perception. Asterisk. And perception builds reputation. And reputation builds influence. When you refuse to argue, you quietly send a message. Asterisk. I decide what deserves my energy. Asterisk. And ironically, asterisk, this makes you appear wiser, calmer, and more dominant than if you tried to win the debate. Asterisk people start second-guessing themselves. Asterisk, they start correcting their tone. They start respecting your restraint, not because you fought them, but because you didn't. Asterisk 4.4, the art of letting others expose themselves. Asterisk. One of Machiavelli's most powerful ideas is this. Asterisk, if you remain quiet long enough, your enemies destroy themselves. Asterisk arguments protect them. Silence exposes them. Because when someone argues aggressively, emotionally, or irrationally, asterisk, and you remain steady, detached and unbothered, asterisk, everyone sees the contrast. Asterisk, you don't need to point out their weakness. Asterisk, they display it voluntarily. Asterisk, you don't need to highlight their insecurity. Their behavior speaks for itself. You don't need to prove they're wrong. Asterisk, they prove it for you. Asterisk, this is why silence is not passive. Asterisk, it is strategic. Patience. 4.5, when you don't argue, you shift from defense to authority. Asterisk, arguing is defensive, silence is authoritative. Arguing says, asterisk, I need to fix you. Asterisk, silence says, asterisk, you're irrelevant to my composure. Asterisk, arguing says, asterisk, I want you to understand me. Asterisk, silence says, asterisk, I don't require your understanding. Asterisk, arguing says, asterisk, I'm emotionally invested. Asterisk, silence says, asterisk, I've mastered emotional independence. Asterisk, by refusing to argue, you elevate yourself to a position of calm authority. Asterisk, the exact position emperors, philosophers, generals, and leaders always occupied. Asterisk, because power doesn't shout, power doesn't scramble, power doesn't beg to be heard. Asterisk, power is felt, not broadcasted. 4.6. The final Machiavellian shift. Asterisk, here's the truth the modern world forgot. Asterisk, the strongest man in the room is the one who doesn't need to prove it. Asterisk, arguments rely on ego. Authority relies on presence. Arguments seek approval. Power seeks outcomes. Arguments try to dominate the moment. Silence dominates the narrative. When you refuse to argue, asterisk, you stop playing the small game of words and start playing the big game of influence. This is how you quietly climb above the emotional chaos of ordinary people. Asterisk, this is how you gain their respect without demanding it. Asterisk, this is how you win. Asterisk, not by force, not by noise, not by debate. Asterisk, but by becoming the type of man who cannot be dragged into battles beneath him.